can see it in the heart. When we took it out, we've cleaned that out for the most part. Okay, the plaque, you mean?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now, if you'll hand me that, and don't stick yourself there, Corey. Okay. Now, we're going to go through those 31 muscles. Okay. This is that sheet that is here. Okay. Those are the 31 muscles that you have to know.
And this is the same capital as the particle.
Unless you're going to donate your body.
Can I sit up on this?
Okay, yep. Okay. All right. So if you look, we're going to go through. Now some of these are easier than others. Okay. Now if we look, one of the easiest ones that we're going to have is this guy that's up here, which is the sternocleidomastoid. Okay. That's the first one, named for points of attachment and doing that. Okay. The second one is the pectoralis major, which is named how? Yeah, major meaning because it's a big one, and
Location.
pectoralis because of its location. Now everything that the pectoralis major does, it does to the humerus. So the insertion is on the humerus. Okay, what it does to the humerus. The origin is all the way around everything, clavicle, true ribs, false ribs down here. Okay,
In males, is that bigger than in females?
just
That muscle?
because of
The body size?
just because of testosterone. Okay, this guy here that's underneath is the pectoralis minor, named because size and location. Okay, now just because they have the same name, it's different. Remember I said the major does what? The insertion is on the humerus. Okay, everything it does to the humerus. The pectoralis minor, the insertion is on the coracoid process of the scapula. And the origin is down here on ribs 3, 4, and 5. So when it contracts, it does what? Pulls it down, depresses the scapula. Okay. Number 4, okay, back here. Okay, and I'm going to show you, it's back here. Turn around. All the way around. Okay. On Marion, okay, the trapezius goes from where? I'm not going to touch you. No, you don't want me holding that either. Okay. From the occipital down to T12. That's the origin. The insertion is on the scapula. Okay, on the spine of the scapula. Now that trapezius is a big muscle. Okay, that you can see right here, this right here in Marion, that's that right there. Now, if the upper fibers contract, okay, from here up here, you pull your shoulders up, right? Okay? If the lower fibers down here contract, it depresses. Now, the fibers that are through here run straight across, and they adduct the scapula, which means the other way. They pull the scapula together. Okay? I'm not going to be politically correct, and if you say that I said this, I never did. It's a 7th grade girl's best friend, all right, is doing that, all right, is that, all right?
Now you said the condyles? Occipital?
No, just the occipital bone itself.
Oh, okay.
Over here, okay, do you see all these? And they did a nice job of getting all of these out. On a thin male, you see all of these. Do you see all those points? They're there. These are the serratus anterior. How are they named? Serratus is like your serrated knife. Anterior is because they're on the front. Okay? Now, the origin is ribs 1 through 8 or 9. That's what you see on a thin male. Okay? Posteriorly, the insertion is on the scapula. And what they do is they abduct the scapula. They roll your shoulder forward. Okay? Now, I'm not a big fan of Mike Tyson, the boxer. But Mike Tyson had one incredible set of serratus anterior. Because if you followed boxing at all, whether he did or not, how did Mike Tyson win matches? He didn't knock people out. He did what? He beat him up. He killed him inside because he did what? Rotated his shoulder. He had all the strength rotating the shoulder in like this, both sides. Okay. External intercostals. Okay, we're going to do this. 6 is external. Okay. Okay. External intercostals. How are they named? External and between the ribs. And they elevate the ribs. Okay? They do this. That's what they do. And they're lateral.
Is that where you get costochondritis?
Okay? Internal intercostals depress the ribs and are medial. Okay? Now if you look, okay, if we take, your ribs are like on pail handles. They're like this. You have two muscles of inspiration. What are the two muscles that allow you to take air in? Diaphragm and the external intercostals. Because the diaphragm increases the vertical dimension, the external intercostals increase the horizontal dimension. And they elevate the ribs. So the external intercostals are like this. Okay? Where the origin, if we're talking about the external intercostals, the origin is up here, the insertion is down here. Now the wording in that thing is strange, but it's the only way we can do it. Okay? The origin is on the inferior border of the rib above. That's the least movable point. The insertion is what? The superior border of the rib below, because what does it do? It pulls the rib up. Okay? Now, the internal intercostals are what? Exactly the opposite. Because they do what? They depress the ribs. So the insertion's up here and the origin's down here. Because they do what? So the origin's on the superior border of the rib below, the insertion is on the the origin's on the superior border of the rib below, the insertion is on the inferior border of the rib above because it does what? Okay? The internal intercostals are the ones that are used in forced expiration. Okay? When you have bronchitis, your chest aches because you're always doing what? Forcing air out. Those are the muscles that get sore. Deltoid, and I'll move some of these over. Where's your deltoid? Shoulder. Okay. Once again, a big muscle. This guy up here. Right? Okay. Where's the insertion?
Clavicle and
Insertion.
Humerus.
Insertion. Most movable point.
Deltoid process?
The deltoid tuberosity. What's the origin? Now, Wendy. Clavicle and spinal scapula up here. Because it does what? Once again, if it's the muscles that are straight across, it does what? Abducts this. It's a strong abductor. But if these anterior muscles contract, then it's a weak flexor or it's a weak extensor. Okay, if you look over here, okay, this guy that's on top here, or you can see this guy here, is the biceps brachii. Okay, how's the biceps brachii named?
Two attachments.
Because it has
Two attachments.
two attachments. Okay, there's a short head and a long head. You can see both of those there. Now we've already talked about the biceps brachii. What's the biceps brachii do? It has two actions.
Supination.
Flexes and supinates the hand. What's the insertion?
Extension and pronation.
What's the insertion?
radial tuberosity.
Radial tuberosity. Because it does what? It does this. as opposed to the, where are we at? Oh, 10. Yeah, okay. Over here, if we look on the back side of the arm, is the triceps. Triceps has how many origins? Three. What's the insertion of all three of the heads of the tricep?
The Lebanon process.
Yeah, what's it do? What's the triceps do? Extends. All it does is extend the elbow. So where's its insertion is on the
Olecranon process.
olecranon process. Okay, and do that. All right. Brachialis. Okay. Now, we talked about this one as well, I think. This is the guy that's right there underneath the biceps, that guy right there. The brachialis flexes a pronated forearm.
Number 11.
Does this. What has to be the insertion? The only thing it does is this.
Corpoid.
Doesn't do any of this. Is the ulna. Right? Only thing it does is that.
Brachioradialis.
Okay. Brachioradialis is this guy that comes down. Let me see where this guy is. This guy right here. Brachioradialis. Okay.
13 is supinator.
Okay. Now, if you look at this, the supinator is this guy right here. And if you look at the what's the supinator do?
Supination.
Duh. Okay, as opposed to the pronator that, duh. Now, if you, okay, now tell me, if the supinator's here, okay, the supinator does what? Supinates the hand. What's the insertion? What's it absolutely have to be? The
Radius.
radius. Because it does what? Pulls the radius over. What's the origin?
Humerus.
Lateral epicondyle. Okay, where's the pronator? On the inside here, what's the insertion? Radius. Okay, what's the origin? Medial epicondyle, because it does what? Pulls it back over.
14 is forearm flexors, or forearm
Okay.
extensors. Sorry.
Let's do 14 and 15 together. Now, making you a believer in a higher being somewhere is 14 and 15. 14 is this whole group of muscles. There's about 6 of them that are on the posterior forearm. Okay, let me make sure that I know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that do what? That are going to extend. Okay, they're on the posterior surface anatomically because they do what? Extend the hand. Whereas on this side, the anterior surface then, this group of whole 6 muscles, you don't need to know the individual muscles, you just need to know the group. Okay? Because they flex or what? On the inside surface. The extensors are on the outside. Okay. Diaphragm. I showed you the diaphragm, right? It's up here. Okay? Now, keep in mind the diaphragm's a dome. Okay? The only force that a muscle has is when it contracts. It gets shorter. So when all the muscles of the diaphragm contract, the fibers get shorter, and what happens? It goes down. It flattens and increases the vertical dimension of the thorax.
Not just gums.
Okay? Now, if you look at these next guys, okay, the next 6, let me make sure I got them lined out here, kind of. Okay, rectus abdominis.
Is he tummy?
What do we call it? And guys, that's your 6-pack. Okay,
Yeah.
what's it do?
Looks good. I don't have one. Don't
Yeah.
worry about me.
Looks good. What's its function?
Stability.
Support your lower
What's it
back.
allow you to do?
Stand up.
Flex
What does it do?
spine.
Keeps you erect.
Well, not necessarily.
Flexion.
Flexion, doing, yeah, what? Doing
Sit-ups,
sit-ups.
yeah.
Doing sit-ups, okay. What's the origin and what's the insertion?
Pubic crest.
Well, think about this. I mean, you're doing sit-ups. What's moving and what's not?